Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, everybody. My name is Bill Woodcock,
And I'm Steve Hunt. Hello, hello.
and you have once again tuned into, but before we go, the podcast by Gen X, about Gen X, and for everybody. Steve, as we are sitting here recording this fine podcast production, it is the the occasion of the autumnal equinox. The days are equivalent,
Mhm.
12 hours of sun, 12 hours of light, all around the world, and fall is at hand. So, Steve, it had always been that the fall was augured by certain conditions, certain traditions. The leaves would start to turn.
Mhm.
There would come a crispness in the air. Days would get a little bit cooler, nights would get a little bit colder. I sound like I just repeated a lyric from like a Rush song. But 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 nowadays, Steve, with the commercial Western society, these seasons seem to have been blurred. Halloween candy goes on sale right after July 4th.
Yeah.
And with climate change, these seasons are blurred more still. Leaves start to turn brown in August. Days sometimes don't get cooler until November. But ours is not to wax philosophical about why yesteryear was better than today. Ours is to discuss what about yesteryear was really fucking awesome because we're
Mhm.
Gen X and that might not come again. What do you remember, Steve, as your favorite fall traditions?
Well, and obviously we're gonna get into several episodes that get into what's going on with the fall. So I'll stick to changing of the seasons for now, and we'll get into some of the other things, Halloween, etc., in later episodes. By the way, Bill, by my count, this is episode number 25, which I
Yes,
believe is silver anniversary. I believe 25 is something like
this
that.
is this is the end of our first unofficial season of Forward Maryland. So, yay verily to that. Huzzah! I
Yeah.
would like to thank all of our sponsors, of which we're still looking for some.
Yeah, ring us, please. But to those who have hung with us for this early stage of this adventure, thank you. Anyway, fall. I, full confession, I am a spring and fall guy. I really am. I mean, winter is. I appreciate the snow. It's lovely to look at. As a kid, obviously, snow has a whole different joy that you don't get as an adult because you have to drive in that shit. Um, and summer is great because you have all the good summer stuff, the pools and all that. But especially here in Maryland, you get into August with the heat and the humidity. It's an oven, and you hit the nail, right on the head as far as fall, as far as the weather. Um, I played sports as a kid. I played football as a kid. I loved fall as a kid playing football because in all that gear, you're already hot. So give me a nice day with not a whole lot of humidity, and I'm good. Give me that as kids, 75 to 80-degree, no humidity day, and the night that drops just a hair below, 60. Give me that all day long, especially again, playing football. You did as well, I believe, Bill. Training camp was in August. That shit was brutal. The 2-a-days and 3-a-days in August, pass. But once it got into the season and that temperature broke, beautiful. So um, that's the big thing that I remember is you'd have kind of that Indian summer last blasty thing at some point in September, and then it would just settle into this really nice, beautiful thing. And you're right, the leaves would start turning. I live well, you as well, maybe even more than I did because you were in an area that was a lot more spread out. But I was in Well, it was 70s suburbia, but there was certainly enough farmland and parkland and stuff like that where you could appreciate the leaves turning. So yeah, that the weather for me, that's what made it for fall.
Well, you speak of the weather, and so there's a few things that I remember. The leaves falling were always fun
Yeah, yeah.
because being on a wooded property, you would collect those damn leaves, and you would find leaves that were really cool. And
Mhm,
my grandmother taught me a craft where you would press the leaves between wax paper
mhm.
and make a little collage of them, or a mobile, or some sort, some such little item. Or, the big fun of fall was always raking the leaves up, forming a massive pile, and then jumping into said pile with reckless abandon. That was great fun for all the neighborhood kids.
Oh
I
yeah.
can remember sometimes falling asleep in that damn leaf pile. So that always made fall fun. Another item, foods that you would only really get in the fall, or that would start to become available in the fall, and that you would enjoy most in the fall. I have to say, this entire Western cultural obsession with all things pumpkin, I don't remember any of that being before American Thanksgiving, which is in November.
Mhm.
I mean, you didn't see a pumpkin pie on the shelves until like a week before, maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And then you didn't see them on the shelves except in the sales section except for about a week or two after Thanksgiving, because some people didn't get their pumpkin pie, and so, they wanted it. And pumpkin pie was the only manifestation of pumpkin.
Yeah.
No pumpkin spice latte, no pumpkin ice cream, no pumpkin whipped cream, no pumpkin muffins. Actually, I stand corrected. There was a little bit of pumpkin bread around in the world, but by and large, it was not pumpkin, 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 pumpkin all the time. Um, the flavor of the fall that I can remember most was apple, because we had apple trees on our property and they always gave a lot of fruit.
Mhm.
And then my grandmother and great grandmother would make apple pies. And then, not that far from us, where we lived, there was a cider mill.
Mm.
And you could buy apples there, but you could also buy fresh pressed cider. And we would always go to the cider mill and get 2 gallons of cider. Note that the cider was unpasteurized cider. So it contained in it all the helpful bacteria that make a growing body good. So we would put both gallons in the refrigerator, drink one, but never touch the other. Maybe like a glass full, but never touch the other otherwise. Then, about a week, maybe a little bit longer after the cider was purchased, the cider, as my grandmom would like to say, had a little bit of a snap to it. When they say snap, it turned hard.
Yes.
So, bacteria, mixed with the sugar and the apples, and created a little fermentation. And so you got some hard cider in the house. And that wasn't a bad thing. Now I think in the US, I think there's only certain conditions where you can have unpasteurized cider, but they're no fun here sometimes. But I remember apple being the flavor. Another thing I remember having as a flavor of the fall, licorice. I don't know whatever happened to licorice, but I remember there being a lot of licorice going on in the fall. And yeah, we'll talk later on in the fall about Halloween and candy and all that. It's too early for all that yet. Maybe around the first of the month of October we will, but You know, I don't remember pumpkin being a thing. I remember, I do remember, the whole weather, the crispness of the air, things kind of changing. Um, you used the term Indian summer. Man,
Hmm.
did we just get in trouble with somebody? We might have just gotten in trouble with a lot of people because I don't even know what they say now.
Well,
When
yeah, I forgot about that.
Not
Yeah,
sure. I mean,
stuff we said when we were kids.
I think they just say like second summer. Is that what they say? I don't know.
Yeah.
But those are the things. I mean, am I wrong? Because we didn't grow up that far from each other. But did I mean, the only other pumpkins I ever saw were the damn ones that you would go to the patch and cut and make a jack-o'-lantern out of.
No, you're right, and again, we're going to get into Halloween, and one of the Halloween traditions, of course, as is the case with all things Charlie Brown, was the Great Pumpkin, and it was this mysterious Great Pumpkin, and it almost felt like that with real pumpkins. They just kind of showed up at some point in early October, and then in early November they were gone. And it was like, wait a minute, what gives here? Because you didn't see them at any other point of the year. Um, and you're right. I mean, you go to the store, and pumpkin pie was one of those things that you literally could only get a certain time of the year, and then they were gone. So you're right, and you know, thank you Starbucks and others who have turned pumpkin into this thing that you see in everything starting around, I don't know what, Labor Day. They start rolling
August.
out the pumpkin
The
everything.
friggin' Starbucks starts to give us pumpkin spice lattes, or as they say, PSLs, in August.
Yeah. So I'm with you. And then apples, absolutely. Because the apples that fall is the best time of the year for apples, and so we would get our fill of those as well. And by the way, Bill, the whole hard apple cider, put that down along the list of all the other things we've talked about for these episodes of how we survived that. I have no idea. With your folks letting the cider ferment to turn into hard cider with the bacteria.
Why are you putting air quotes around hard cider? It was hard cider. Oh, what are you saying? Are you saying there could have been harmful bacteria? Are you saying I could have possibly died?
Well, I'm saying you're sitting here talking about how the bacteria is fermenting in this concoction, and you're waiting around for it to do its work before you drink it. So,
It's the magic of nature. Don't
well,
you
well
like
yeah,
nature?
but I'm just saying today you're right. They would have pasteurized the hell out of the thing to kill it all.
Oh, they
So-
do, the fuckers. And there used to be other types of cider. Like if you go to like a Amish store, you can still find cherry cider, which is also good shit.
oh, I did
You
not
know what
know
I
that.
mean? If you're further up north in the US and in Canada, you find like stuff that's cherry or
Hmm.
cranberry. That's good. Further south, it's more like walnut and pecan and all of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the pumpkins would just appear and then disappear.
Yeah.
It wasn't a whole like 3 4 month thing. You couldn't get pumpkins in February. Why the hell do you want a pumpkin in February? I don't know. But and when you like took out all the guts of the pumpkin,
Hmm.
like mom and dad didn't make it into a pie. Nobody baked the seeds so you
No,
could eat those. It was
no.
just slop, and you just threw it out, and it became compost.
It was stuff you got rid of so you could start carving, is what it was.
Right. Well, we talked before about like and I want to go back to it a little bit. About the start of like unofficial seasons in the fall, like the new television season.
Right.
The holiday catalogs. There was a whole vibe around fall. The start of school. There was a whole vibe around this time, September, that had a very January feeling to it. In fact, quite honestly, if you think about it, January is a pretty damn boring month.
Yeah.
I mean, after you have the end of year holidays, what goes on in January? Not a lot. I mean,
Well, you're
after New Year's Day, there's really nothing. So,
certainly nothing outside.
all these things coming out and debuting in September.
Mhm.
September to me just felt like a more natural time of year for the year to start.
Mhm. It really did with all the things you talked about. And you're right, January, you're pretty much holed up because at least where we live, it's cold. You know, everything, the trees are all the leaves are all gone, so they're just like there. Um, you basically it's a great time if you want to sit in the house and watch television or find other indoor activities. But you're certainly not running around. And you're right about the whole leaf pile thing. We didn't have a lot of leaves in our yard, but my brother and I had a lawn service and we raked a lot of leaves. And if you don't think we took time before we bagged those suckers to make a jump or two, oh, we absolutely did. So we would hope that the folks whose yard we were working on weren't looking to say, oh my God, we're paying these guys to jerk around in our leaves, but we'd get a good dive or two
Well,
in.
hopefully you literally did not jerk around in anyone's lead.
Well, yeah, okay. Uh, no, but we
What's
we did
wrong with you?
yeah, we did a dive or two. We did have some neighbors in like some of the older houses that did have a lot of trees, and when it was time to rake leaves, we would just kind of magically swing over and help our friends rake so that we could do some dog piles and dive bombs. So absolutely, leaves were a thing. But yeah, good times.
Now, as with about every other time of the season, and as we go into seasons 3 and 4, I guess we'll suss these out further. Fall was not without its perils, real or perceived. Were you ever admonished to not jump into leaf piles you didn't know because you would wind up hitting a rock, or the leaves would be put like around like a wall or like a small bird bath of some sort, and you would crack your skull open?
We never had that because again, we were in suburbia, so the leaf piles we dove into were raked up anyway, and they were raked away from any objects that might cause harm. Like we did have a big tree in our backyard that gave a decent amount of leaves, so we had to go through the effort of raking not all those leaves around the tree, but then raking the pile far enough away from the tree and the fence for the next door neighbor so that we could get a good run without worrying about cracking a skull. So we took great care in where we put said leaf pile.
So first off, I never remember this ever actually happening to anybody, not even
No,
anecdotally, because you know how these things are. Oh,
yeah,
somebody's cousin's, sibling, cracked their skull on a leaf pile and they had to go to the ER and they're still under observation.
yeah.
But that never happened, not even anecdotally. And I don't know who would actually go around saying, I know what would be cool, to mess up neighborhood kids by
Yeah,
having them knock their heads open in a leaf pile. And exactly how many kids would that happen to? Exactly one.
yeah,
And then anybody else would just, dissipate the leaf pile and expose the danger if the stiff, chilly winds of the fall didn't just blow away the damn leaves, exposing the peril.
right. And the other thing I would say is, the as far as the fall, the change of seasons, and totally geeky thing for a lot of folks listening, but as a kid, it was something that first evening where you took a breath and you saw the smoke. That first breathing smoke event of the fall was always one of those things. Especially playing football, you'd have that night game, and then all of a sudden, you take that breath, all of a sudden there's the smoke. It's like, ooh. I don't know if that was a thing for you, but it was one of those, you knew you were heading into fall because those nights ticked a little closer to 50, as you got later on and you started getting the smoke from your breath. That was kind of cool.
That was kind of cool. Um, you know, when would, when would frost hit?
You're really now getting into more October-ish. I think first frost would normally, I remember it being maybe early October because I know my dad, who was a big garden guy, September was always the month to cut down all the perennial stuff because he always believed if you cut it down, it would grow back up nicely. So he didn't just like let it die off and get floppy. So I mean, it was a very meticulous drill, and usually September because you cut it down before the first frost hits the exposed root base. So I remember it being around early October from my dad because he would do all of his end of season garden stuff in the month of September before that first frost hit it. So I think it was maybe mid October, maybe, unless we got a weird turn in late September where the nights just dropped but then they would tick back up. But you always want to beat that first one.
I would see. It's funny because I remember it being a little bit later, like mid-October was about as late as early
Yeah.
as I remember it. I don't ever remember it being frost in September, but I can remember it being mid-October into early November,
Mm-hmm.
depending, and then that grand tome of every year would come out called the Old Farmer's Almanac.
Ah, yes. Ah, yes, because you want to know what the weather's going to be. But you're right. The real
Well,
frost is October. But the thing about September, weather-wise, you want to talk about a moody month. In Maryland, I think you'd get, well, you wouldn't get any snow, but you get 3 of the 4 seasons in the same month because you'd get that last blast. You might get that sudden, a couple of 50-degree days, and the nights would drop into like the low 40s, and then it would go back up. So it was a pretty moody month.
so you mentioned this. There were freaking hurricanes that would hit here in September.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because these coastal storms come up the east coast of the United States. And then every once in a while, one would decide, oh, this little inlet looks cool. Think they call this the Chesapeake Bay. And then
Sure.
it would come right up the bay and kick everyone's ass.
Oh, yeah. Let's go
Hurricane
surfing.
Agnes, Hurricane Agnew, Hurricane
In Maryland. Imagine
Andrew,
that.
Hurricane I think there was one called Hurricane Irene, although that I just thought that there was one called Hurricane Agnew. I'm giving up on trying to remember these dangerous ass hurricanes. But they were destructive
Oh,
and they
yeah.
happened in September.
Oh, yeah. Hurricane season, because I think Katrina was hit New Orleans like around Labor Day. So, yeah, I mean, your hurricane season is prime time. So you're right. I think you're right about Irene. I remember it Isabel, I think, in '03.
Yes, I was going to say Isabel, but again, Agnew came out of my mouth.
Well, in Maryland, Agnew has some resonance, does it not?
I think Agnew may have resigned in a September. I'm not sure. I know Nixon resigned in August.
Yeah. But yeah, we would get hit with those. I mean, even if we got hit with some remnants of a storm that hit like the Gulf Coast, yeah, we get a little something there. So yeah, September again, very moody
Very
month
volatile.
weather-wise.
Volatile is the
Yes,
word to describe September.
let's roll with that.
And a damn good Earth, Wind, and Fire song,
Oh
may I
well,
add.
hey now, you know, give me that all year long. Forget all month long. You can never go wrong with the elements, baby.
If
And
we
that's
were
always
allowed to have a soundtrack to this podcast, I would fade us out playing the tunes of that Earth, Wind, and Fire classic. But I think we might need to give like 3 cents to somebody.
But it was
So
funny when you got to September 21st and you'd hear that song quite a bit.
well, and then I guess that's the last thing I'm gonna say is that you knew also that the days were getting shorter
Uh-huh.
and that daylight savings time was getting ready to come in, and then the days would, the light would come up later, and then of course would sunsets would be earlier,
Yep.
eventually lending itself to the doom of December and it being dark when you're getting to school and it being damn near dark when you get home.
Yeah, don't even get me started on daylight savings time.
We
That's a
shall
whole
not.
other one. Huh?
We shall not.
That's a whole other one, but you're absolutely right, especially if you had like an after school activity. Absolutely, it would be dark when you left for school and dark when you came home, or darn near dark. So, yeah, yeah, we got into those days that were again, you know, I love the snow and having four seasons, but yeah, there's something about winter unless you get hit with a earth shattering school shutdown storm. It is kind of boring. It really is.
Well, we can talk about that in another 3 months.
There you go.
But yeah, we got a little bit ahead of the change of seasons and we talked about some fall traditions, but what the hell? It's our podcast, Steve, and this was the end of the first season. So we decided we needed to give the listeners and viewers more value.
There you go. And we'll pick that stuff up later. We got you covered, guys.
We got plenty of time. All right, and then with that, we bring another rousing edition of Forward Maryland to a close. Did I just say Forward Maryland?
I was
I
going to say
just used
yes.
the old podcast name. What is wrong with me today?
Well, Bill, speaking of September and fall, we're in the heart of the campaign season, so maybe your political mind is trying to take over.
I'm not. I'm trying to not go there. I'm really trying to not go there. I mean, yeah, Kamala and Donald Trump. I can't. I can't. There's
Yeah,
only once again for the third straight election, there's only one person to vote for. Anyway,
let's close this sucker, pal.
Until next week, for Steve, I'm Bill. You have been watching or listening to another edition of But Before We Go. Bye now.